Hello and welcome to Catholic Answers Live. I am Cy Killett, your host. Very happy to be here with you in the Christmas season, where I can, even the most curmudgeonly church lady will allow me to say Merry Christmas today. And so Merry Christmas to you. And I shouldn't start out picking on curmudgeonly church ladies in the Christmas season. That's no way to behave. That's curmudgeonly of me to have done that. So I apologize. I retract it. I completely retract it. I'm not going to give out the phone number because we're going to have a conversation today with Trent Horn, the great Trent Horn from, you can find him at the Council of Trent, or occasionally debating, or sometimes fighting people. He physically fights people, not like in a bad way. He's a jiu-jitsu or one of those things. Trent Horn, welcome. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you, Cy. And yes, it is jiu-jitsu. I did Muay Thai kickboxing a little back in the day. I want to get back into it very soon, but I think you saw me try out a little bit of jiu-jitsu at the conference. Are you there for our?
I saw it.
Our underground fighting match.
I was horrified by it. Yes, I saw it.
You were horrified
no,
by it?
I wasn't. I mean, it's different.
I am really.
It's different
I am sorry. I'm sorry that we didn't get to your turns. You weren't able to participate.
Lord. No, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing any of that. I fight temptation. That's the only fight that I get involved in, and I'm losing, Trent. I am not winning that fight.
You have to learn how to take temptation, get a good sweep in there, bend its arm behind its back, and that temptation won't bother you anymore. So metaphorically, you have to do all that.
I feel like I've walked into a little bit of a verbal trap because we're going to talk about Judaism today, anti-Semitism and all that. And I started by talking about jiu-jitsu, and I feel like someone's going to make some sort of joke about that. But I
am fine if someone wants to accuse me of practicing JEW jitsu. That is,
which is like what would, like, a Jewish guy throws you or something? Is that what that is? I don't know what that would be.
That would be judo, JEW.
Oh, judo. Yes, that's right. I confused those two. Right.
Yes.
Right. Jiu-jitsu.
When a Jewish guy throws you, it's JEWDO. When he just chokes you unconscious, is JEW jitsu.
Okay. I'm going to say I prefer judo, I think, from those descriptions. But I'm glad, a little levity is not so bad, but it's become painful in our society to.
You know who's good at levity? The Jews, surprisingly enough.
They are. I've heard that, occasionally Jews will be funny. I have heard that you run into an occasional funny Jew.
There are a few funny Jews who you'll find reading leaflets on Jewish sports heroes.
Wait, what? No, I didn't even get your reference.
That's from Airplane. When she's on the wonderful 1980 parody film Airplane, where they're like, "Would you like any reading material? Do you have any light reading material? We have this leaflet on Jewish sports heroes."
Oh, that's not right. Sandy Koufax. Everybody probably says Sandy Koufax when I'm sure there have been plenty of Jewish sports heroes, but Sandy Koufax is probably the most famous because he's famous.
More to get you out of a leaflet, but yeah. So Jews have had to learn, and just reference for everybody here. Half my family is Jewish. I was not raised in a Jewish home. We'll get to conspiracy theories later. My father didn't go to temple or anything like that. I did not have a bar mitzvah. So he's Jewish. His family is Jewish. So I'm half Jewish. That means I can make jokes, poke fun at Jewish people half the time. 1 out of 2 times. The other half I have to abstain. So
all I can make fun of is French Canadians then, because I've got a French Canadian grandmother. That's not even fun. I don't even have anybody good to make fun of. All right, but
do you have carte blanche, by the way, when you're in Quebec, just to go free reign on French Canadian jokes? You're in Quebecois.
I don't know if I have free range, but I did. But I don't want to talk about French Canada. It's a great country, French Canada. I love it as a nation and as a people. But I want to talk about the Jews. And here's the deal. It seems to me, I don't think I'm the only one that this has occurred to, but I have had personal experience of it, especially among a certain age group, young people of us. And I can't tell you what exactly the parameters are, of a growing nostalgia for Catholic anti-Semitism. And that's what I think of it as, is a kind of nostalgia, or a kind of I have all kinds of theories about why people, but I want to get you
Yeah.
why you think this is. But I think it's a kind of like in the good old days, we used to put the Jews in their place, and I guess their place was the ghetto or something. But there's a feeling of a real Catholic kind of has a little bit of Jew hatred in the blood. I hate to admit how close to the truth that is in some ways, because the history is rough. But tell me,
Yes.
why do you think we see this rise of anti-Semitism among Catholics?
Well, I think that there's just been a troubling rise in anti-Semitism in the past 2 years. But
Oh,
anti-Semitism is something that has, followed the Jews every place they go, and I think part of that is just rooted in them being the original chosen people, and so because of that, then they're going to have diabolical attacks against them. Think
yeah,
about the persecutions they went through all throughout the story of salvation in the Old Testament. And while God's chosen people are no longer restricted to the Jewish people because we have a Catholic universal covenant in Christ, Romans chapter 11 is very clear that the gifts and calling of God are irrevocable,
hmm,
that God still has a special love and care for the Jewish people, and he loves them for the sake of their forefathers through which he made a covenant. And so they have a special place in the plan of salvation, but it's not one that is completely isolated from Jesus Christ. So I think that because of that, there's this kind of it's almost diabolical. You see it in just so many
yeah,
different cultures, times, and places. Much the same as there will be anti-Christian rhetoric and anti-Christian hatred coming from the devil, where Christians are persecuted in all different kinds of times and places. That's important to keep into account. Um,
I feel like
so go ahead, Shai.
I
Yeah.
was just going to say, I feel like the anti-Christian thing, I almost can, I can kind of grant it to you because there's a lot of Christians. I mean, the number people I think would be shocked if they really understood how few Jews there are in the world. Like it's a tiny, tiny little minority. So it seems to me
Right.
outside, like if you're like, I don't know, for any other ideology or religion, well, Christianity is a major competitor. Judaism isn't even in the
Right.
running. They're not even they don't even make the top 10.
Right. But they've always been a small group of people who, when they live in a society, are the minority or the outsider group. And when you're a minority or an outsider group, you're much more liable to be subject to persecution, discrimination, and unjust treatment. And that's why I mentioned Christians, because people will say there are different anti Semitic tropes online, and we'll need to make sure we define anti-Semitism very carefully, because that is how people try to get away with anti-Semitic behavior, by redefining that term.
Okay.
But they will point out, for example, there's a common trope saying that Jews have been kicked out of or expelled from 109 countries. And so someone will say to you, if you knew a guy who was kicked out of 109 bars, don't you think maybe the guy is the problem, not the bars? But of course, when you look at the records of what they're talking about, it's not 109 different countries. It's references to 109 different localities or places or regions or even just cities over the past 2,000 years. Some people even include, when Jews in the Old Testament were, captured by Babylon as being kicked out of a country.
Yeah.
So it goes through that. But when you go through each one saying, oh, well, what happened? Well, what happened here? Oh, well, there's unjust discrimination. There's false accusations of things like well poisoning, or Jews refuse to convert, so they have to be expelled. But the problem is, if you're going to make that argument, you're going to say, oh, well, if this guy is kicked out of 109 bars, so he's the troublemaker, not the bars. You can make a similar list of countries and of places where Christians, or Catholics in particular, have been expelled. Even in the United States, you had the Popish Act in not Maryland and Massachusetts. Maryland was for Catholics, Maryland. But in Massachusetts, you had the Popish Act, where priests were expelled from the colony. You have Catholics expelled from medieval Japan, Roman persecution of Christians,
Yeah.
obviously Protestant and Catholic persecution of one another. So the fact that a group has had a has been a victim of persecution for a very long time. Normally, for other groups, we would say, oh, that just shows that they need more protection. It's been unfair. how they have been treated throughout history. It's anti-Semitic if you say, oh, Jews are the exception, they actually deserved it.
Yeah, yeah. I see what you're saying.
So I think what's important here, we have to define anti-Semitism very carefully, because people they misuse it. They misuse the term all the time. Do you want me to go into that
Would
right
you
now?
please? Yeah,
sure.
let's just do that. Let's get a good grounding in what is anti-Semitism, because it's certainly not disagreeing with Jews or even disagreeing with the Jewish state or anything like that. But there is such a thing as anti-Semitism. You can't. So what is it? What are we talking about when we say it?
I would say that anti-Semitism refers to a kind of prejudice or discrimination. Now, here's the thing also with Jew, Jew can refer to an ethnic group of people or a religious group of people. Oftentimes it overlaps, but not always. You'll have ethnic Jews who are not religious, and you will have religious Jews, let's say, who are converts to Judaism through marriage or something, and they're not ethnically Jewish, but they're religiously Jewish. Usually the two things overlap. So anti-Semitism would say that ethnic Jews are morally inferior to other non-ethnic Jews, that there's a moral inferiority about their race, or treating religious Jews as being a religion, a religious group that is morally inferior to other non-Christian religions. So it's important that I have those distinctions in there, because I would say, for example, like someone said to me, do you think that Jews are morally inferior to Catholics? So I'd say, well, they lack baptism, so they lack the graces that are present in baptism, just like any other unbaptized person. So that's not unique to Judaism. That's unique to being a non-Christian. So if I say, for example, that Jews should convert, I have a whole episode of my podcast on that recently. That's not anti-Semitic, because I would treat any non-Christian in that way. The problem is when you treat Jewish people in a way that is uniquely demeaning, dehumanizing, or considers them morally inferior to others. And so that's where anti-Semitism is, not merely acknowledging that every person needs to be redeemed by Jesus Christ, including Jewish people.
All right. We're talking a bit about the rise in anti-Semitism. I'm glad to have the opportunity to talk about it. It's something that has become quite notable in recent years, both inside and outside the Catholic Church. But I must say, personally, I'm most concerned to see young Catholics being persuaded that there's something wrong with the Jews. There's something fundamentally wrong with the Jews, and that we somehow need to be on our guard against Jews. We'll talk about that with Trent Horn as we continue on Catholic Answers Live.
Catholic Answers Live.
Do you have a question but prefer to ask it privately? Catholic Questions can help. Go to CatholicQuestions.com to ask your question online, email us, drop us a letter, or give us a call. Longtime Catholic Answers Live apologist and author Jim Blackburn or another Catholic Questions apologist will be happy to assist you. Catholic Questions proudly supports Catholic Answers Live, so visit us at CatholicQuestions.com today. That's CatholicQuestions.com.
The power of prayer simply means that words have an effect. For example, when a couple says, "I do," it literally changes two people to becoming one in marriage. When you say, "I love you," it changes us and it gives us value. The power of prayer is in the words and in the sentiment, but it's also in the fact that God, who is omnipotent, all-powerful, answers our prayers.
Welcome back. Catholic Answers Live. Trent Horn, our guest on this Boxing Day. I forgot to say it was Boxing Day. Happy Boxing Day. It's not Jiu-Jitsu Day, Trent. It's Boxing Day. I don't know. I look it up every year, and then every year I forget what Boxing Day is. It's something the English people do. And so to all of them, happy Boxing Day.
Yeah, it's that and Michaelmas, the forgotten holidays of the fall tradition.
It's St. Michael's Day today?
No, that was back in September, I think.
Oh.
But when I think about this time of year, the forgotten holidays, the minor holidays.
Oh, yeah. Well, all right. Well, we're talking about anti-Semitism. I'm really glad you're here to do this as we approach the end of the year, because 2025 was marked by considerable outbursts of anti-Semitism. Certainly, the Jewish state is at war, and that is, war brings out the worst in us. But that's certainly not the full explanation for what has happened this year and in recent years. And it doesn't at all explain the rise of anti-Semitism among Catholics, especially Catholic young people. I have to say I have several times been personally shocked by what young people have said to me when I've been out talking and they wanted to talk about things like international Jewry. And the first time someone did that, I actually thought that they were joking, so I made a joke out of it. And because I just didn't, that wasn't on, what do they say? That wasn't on my dance card.
Radar.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting that to come up. But just recently we saw this, even a high school here in California, in San Jose. I'm pretty sure you're safe from the international Jewish conspiracy in San Jose, but the high schoolers there, they made a swastika they shaped themselves into a swastika and posted the picture and I think it was, in that case, it was, I think they think that they're supporting Palestinian people that way or something. But we've lost something, Trent. We've lost the thread here. We were pretty clear that anti-Semitism was bad, and now that seems to be breaking down.
Yeah, so I think there's a lot to unpack here when you talk about the rise in anti-Semitism. I think also we have to be aware of arguments that are made, misunderstandings on each side. So, for example, some people, you might hear someone who expresses anti-Semitic views and say to them, well, how can you be anti-Semitic as a Catholic? Jesus and Mary and the apostles were Jewish. And what they'll say is, well, no, I'm not talking about people of Jewish ethnicity. I'm talking about Judaism as a false religion, and as a false religion, it causes harm, and I oppose it as a false religion, which any Catholic could say. But that's kind of a bait and switch, because then they'll go on to say that any ethnic Jew who is involved in any bad doing, that somehow shows that all Jews are bad. That's really a lot of anti-Semitism is rooted by logical fallacies. And by the way, it's not good also define it as just like hating Jewish people, because a lot of them will say, well, I don't hate Jewish people. They'll just say, I recognize that Jewish people have undue influence in society and cause a lot of social ills, and so we need to, quote unquote, push back against Jewish power, whatever that means, which can have very nefarious meanings. And they never quite get into it, what they mean exactly. And I might say, would you support laws long before the Holocaust happened, laws that would restrict Jews from owning businesses, Jews from holding political office? The road to genocide starts one step at a time. Sure. What exactly are you talking about here? So yeah, it's not about hatred, but you can be discriminatory towards a group even if you don't have hatred towards that group. So for example, someone would be anti-Irish, anti-Irish, for example, they say, look, I have lots of Irish friends. I love my Irish friends. They're hilarious. They're great to go out drinking with. But, they are a bunch of drunks and they always make the neighborhoods worse when they move in. I don't hate them, but that's just you would say, oh, well, that's
it's bigotry.
That's bigotry, wrapped in a mantle of trying to be nice about it. And many people who are anti-Semitic would say the same thing about Jews. They say, oh, I love Jews. Jews are funny. I have Jewish friends, but they cause a lot of problems, blah, 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 blah. And there's a fallacy in here in that they will not hold, they won't hold other groups to these kinds of standards. They'll follow this fallacious way of thinking. If Jews are overrepresented in a bad thing, it follows that Jews are responsible for the bad thing. Yeah. So they'll try to claim, and in most cases they're actually factually wrong. They claim that Jews were overrepresented, or that Jews were the majority responsible for slavery in the United States, which is not true, has been debunked. That they are the majority control of pornography, even though think about the most famous pornographers in American history, people like Hugh Hefner, Larry Flint. They were not Jewish. But going on, they'll say, oh, if they're overrepresented in something that's bad, even if they're not the majority, because Jews in the U.S. I think represent like 2% of the population. If there's more than 2% of Jews in a vice or a bad thing, that shows that the Jews are responsible for that bad thing, which doesn't follow at all. Whites are overrepresented in drunk driving, DUIs, in child sex offense cases. It doesn't mean that white people are responsible for those things. There's just different cultural factors involved here. And the argument is also inconsistent because they'll say, oh, if Jews are overrepresented in a bad thing, they're responsible for the bad thing. But if Jews are overrepresented in a good thing, such as Jews are more likely to win Pulitzer Prizes, they're overrepresented in fields of medicine, for example, in science, inventions, things like that. Oh, well, they don't get any credit for that. Or, they're not going to get any gold stars for that kind of stuff. So it's very selective reasoning to try to pin, and ultimately all forms of bigotry, whether it's towards Jews, towards people of color, towards women, towards Catholics. I mean, many of the people who express anti-Semitism was once, bound up in there are traditional Catholic elements that have suffered from this, but many of the same groups who were very anti-Semitic were also very anti-Catholic. I remember I posted a video I did an episode recently looking on history, things like that, and it was a public service announcement about fascism, published in 1943 in the United States, and it talks about the dangers of fascism. It has a guy talking about, we'll never take our country back unless we take it away from them. And they're like, well, who are they? They're like the blacks, the Masons, the Jews, the Catholics. And so there was that particular group. But now it's interesting. There have been Catholics who embrace a kind of anti-Semitism, which is an unfortunate one that also comes from our history of 2,000 years of Catholics and Jews having just a long-standing disagreement about the person of Jesus of Nazareth, and sometimes that being a violent disagreement where Jews have suffered tremendous harm, and that's something that the popes have apologized for, and that's something that Catholics and Jews have had to reconcile with each other.
I'm going to throw you a theory out about why I think there's a growing anti-Judaism and anti-Semitism in among Catholics, and here's my theory of it. I think there is a growing there has been a wave of backlash against the Second Vatican Council. I think people came to see the Second Vatican Council not for what it was, but they saw in it all kinds of evils for which it really wasn't responsible. The Second Vatican Council didn't invent the sexual revolution. It just happened to take place in the middle of the sexual revolution. And it turns out that the sexual revolution ruined society. And one of the societies it ruined was the Catholic family. Okay, so all these things happened. But I think that there's an identification, and it's a rightful identification of the Second Vatican Council with a renewed opening to the Jews, to the Jewish people by Catholics. And so if you're going to really establish your bona fides as a strong, virile, pre-Vatican II Catholic, unlike these Vatican II Catholics who are somehow soft and, effeminate or something like that. I think there's an equation of masculine Catholicism with that stuff that happened before the Second Vatican Council, and then we're not so sure about the masculinity after. This is silly caricature, but I do believe it's in the minds of many people. And I think that people look at it and go, well, that's where the church opened up to the Jews. The whole thing was wrong. I'm throwing it out. I'm throwing out that being nice to the Jews stuff too.
Right. I think a lot of it, you're correct, is especially among younger people, we're seeing this desire for tradition, a desire for antiquity and stability. And so they'll go back to these older sources thinking that, oh, well, this is the real, authentic hardcore Catholic faith, without seeing that there were sinful attitudes expressed here and attitudes that were in error. I mean, I talked about how St. Thomas Aquinas argued that the Jews could be kept in perpetual slavery because of what their ancestors had done to Christ, and that's clearly in error. And then I get people who yell at me, how dare you speak against St. Thomas Aquinas? He's not infallible.
No,
we
know for a fact he made mistakes.
Yeah, exactly. And so they will pick these things and say, oh, because they happened a long time ago, this is awesome, and I want to hold on to that. How could it be wrong? Without understanding how doctrine develops over time, our understanding of how it should be articulated, and where the church has to understand where it implemented unjust measures, for example, in its relations and dealings with Jewish people and with other elements like that. So this desire for tradition and antiquity can be distorted when it tries to pick up things in the past that don't represent the authentic faith, but elements that are really not essential to the deposit of faith that should have been discarded a long time ago.
All right, we will continue. I do want to talk about the lack of fathers in people's homes. I think that also is contributing to this anti-Semitism. People wanting to prove their manliness because they didn't have anyone to prove it to as a child. We'll continue with our discussion of anti-Semitism with Trent Horn on Catholic Answers Live.
When the resurrected Jesus appeared to disciples on the road to Emmaus, they didn't recognize him until the breaking of the bread. The same is true today. In the Holy Eucharist, we really meet Jesus. In The Eucharist is Really Jesus, author Joe Heschmeyer explains how knowing Jesus in the Eucharist is the key to understanding all of Christian faith. Order your copy of The Eucharist is Really Jesus today at shop.catholic.com or get it at a good Catholic bookstore.
Do you have what it takes to defend your Catholic faith? The work of apologetics takes study, practice, and skill, but more than anything, it takes spiritual strength. The Soul of Apologetics, a new prayer resource from Catholic Answers, gives you the spiritual tools every Catholic apologist needs: prayers, meditations, and scripture-based reflections to build up the interior life. Order your copy of The Soul of Apologetics today at shop.catholic.com or ask for it at a good Catholic bookstore.
We hope that one of the things that we communicate here at Catholic Answers Live is that our Catholic faith allows us to be fully serious about all the problems we encounter in the church and in the world, but it also lets us have light hearts and maybe even mix in a bit of fun, and that is exactly what our good friend Joe Heschmeyer does in his popular podcast, Shameless Popery. You should check it out at shamelessjoe.com. Joe's got a deep grasp of the faith, morals, the teachings of the church, all that, but he's also got a witty conversational style. He entertains and he informs, but you will leave equipped to better answer the most common challenges, misconceptions, and questions about the Catholic faith. He's got insightful guests, he does on-air debates, and he takes a close look into all the things that you want to know about as a Catholic living today. You'll walk away knowledgeable and filled with joy. Look for Joe on his YouTube channel. Check him out at shamelessjoe.com or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you like what you hear, become a patron.
Trent Horn is our guest. We're talking a bit about the rise of anti-Semitism among Catholics. Myself, I am very glad to have this conversation. It's, I don't think it's a controversial theological point to say that God loves the Jews, even that God has particular love for the Jews, because if you want to argue with those points, I think you're arguing with Scripture. So, I mean, that's pretty hard to argue. But we are rationalizing creatures, and we can rationalize what we like. There's a lot of people who have decided they don't like the church's change in stance towards the Jews. I mean, before, I think it was about 1962-63, on Good Friday, when we, or was it Good Friday, when we prayed for the Jews. We pray for everybody on Good Friday. People should know that. If you're an atheist, we pray for you. If you're a Christian who's not Catholic, we pray for you. But when we prayed for the Jews, I think there was a reference to them as perfidious Jews. And so, look, I'm not trying to cover up that the Catholic Church has.
Well, yeah. The problem there, Sai, is that the Latin was Perfidious Judaeis, Perfidious, which is Latin for unbelieving or faithless.
Oh,
but it can oftentimes be translated or misunderstood to be perfidious, which means untrustworthy.
I see. Yes. Okay. So thank you for clarifying that.
Which is true. And so it's understanding there that, this can be what we want to do, and things in the liturgy change. For example, you say, you tried to make the liturgy more Protestant. parts of the liturgy where I forget if it was anathema or something else, talking about Protestants in very harsh terms might make it hard to, bring a Protestant to Mass, for example, or something like that, or to bring a Jew to participate in liturgy if they're open to converting, for example. I mean, we shouldn't refrain from speaking the truth. So if you're saying, oh, the Perfidious, the Jews who do not have faith, i.e. faith in our Lord, that's fine. But to say, oh, they're just untrustworthy or morally inferior to other non-Christians,
or
that's
sneaky,
wrong.
or the implications of that. Okay, but there's a growing number of people who are reacting against all of the reforms, I think, of the last 100 years, more and more. And not all of the reforms. I mean, I don't see a big outcry. We should change the Marian doctrines that have been declared, but there's a kind of a selective, anything that got loosened or lightened, they want to go back. They want, and this makes sense. I'm not saying that it doesn't make sense, but there's a kind of throwing whatever babies there are out with whatever bathwater there is here. And certainly a good thing that happened in the Catholic Church since the Second World War is a recognition that we just can't talk about Jews the way we used to, and we can't treat Jews the way we used to.
Well, there's a recognition that we should treat all people as possessing intrinsic human dignity. And so because of that, we ought not engage in behaviors, whether it's at the most extreme end, nearly everybody can agree, like killing, for example, that violates people's dignity. But there's other things that can violate people's dignity, even confining them to being forced to live in certain areas that are substandard and contribute negatively to their health and will cause them great harm, like, ghettos, for example. Other kinds of acts of violence, or even just the spreading of lies about a group of people is an attack on that group of people. When someone says that Catholics are a bunch of cannibals, especially when they have been corrected and they should know better, and they still spread that, well, that lie got Christians killed in the ancient Roman Empire and persecuted. But spreading the lie itself is a harm. Spreading lies and defaming group, just as it's a harm to a person to lie or defame about him, it is a lie. It is harmful and wrong to defame an entire group of people, and so that's why we need to see that, and we also just need to see, I think, that many of these unjust ways that Jews are treated, these same groups of people will also say things about people of color, about women. I think a lot of it stems from this desire to want to say sin is the property of that group of people, not my group of people. I think that many of those who are most rabidly anti-Semitic, they'll pay lip service to the idea of the universality of sin. But what they'll say is that Jews, people of color, women are responsible for the active sins and the worst sins. And white men, their biggest sin is that they're too cowardly to stand up against evil, or something like that. I really, if you had to push them, I think that's what they think. And so it's like they then start to idolize this particular group of people as being that which is going to save humanity from the inferior groups. And that's where you get the roots of white male supremacy, which is something that I don't use, by the way, lightly. People have accused me of being a white supremacist, of being a misogynist. People have accused me of being anti-Semitic for comparing the slaughter of the unborn to the number of people who were killed in the Holocaust. So when the terms get overused, if everybody's anti-Semitic, if everybody's a misogynist, if everybody's racist, then nobody is. So they ought to be used with great care.
All right, so let me ask you this then, because I think many people, the person willing to hear it would like to hear, well, what is the Catholic teaching on the Jews? Because, I mean, is it fair to say the Jews killed Christ? Is it fair to say that the Jews bear a particular guilt for the killing of Christ? Is it fair to say that Christianity has replaced Judaism in God's favor, and that in the act of rejecting the Messiah, the Jews have essentially cast themselves out and made themselves accursed? Are these things?
Right.
Can I or should I be saying these things as a Catholic?
And the problem here is that people who have an agenda and want to find ammunition to use against, say, for example, Jewish people, but this also happens with women and other groups, they can go back into church history and find attitudes or even some teachings that have not become part of the magisterium. These are things that the magisterium does not teach, but may have been things that were said by theologians in the past or even popes in the past, and claim, well, this is just what the church teaches. And what they do is that they will go back applying really a Protestant hermeneutic, where just as Protestants will pick apart the Bible and assemble it and say, this is what the Bible teaches according to their personal opinion, some of these people will go back to past Catholic documents, magisterial documents and non-magisterial ones, assemble their favorite pieces together and say, this is what the church teaches, instead of listening to the living office of the magisterium. The magisterium does not exist. Well, let's see, how should I? Yeah, I think I can phrase it. The magisterium is a living teaching office. The authority of the church's teaching office is found in its living members, the Pope and the bishops who are united to him, not in what you as a person think members of the magisterium in the past said, and compiling all of that together. So that would be the problem there. And so we have things like the Catechism, which itself, the Universal Catechism, also echoes the Catechism of the Council of Trent. The Catechism of the Council of Trent, which was written 500 years ago, it says, the question, are the Jews responsible for the death of Jesus? And while, there were Jews at that time who were responsible for that, but it says here the guilt for Jesus' death seems more enormous in us than in the Jews.
That's 500 years ago the church said that?
Yes.
That's pre-Vatican II, Trent. I don't know if you're aware of this. That's old-timey Catholic 500 years ago.
It is very pre-Vatican II. But there have been many people throughout church history who've tried to say that Jewish people have a unique guilt over Christ's death because they are the descendants of those who originally chanted for his crucifixion, which is a nonsense argument, though. First, there's hardly any Jews today who you could say are descendants of the Jews who are responsible for Christ's death, namely Herod, the guards, the high priests, and some of the crowd that were in Jerusalem. There were millions of Jews that were alive at the time of Jesus, and most of them were not in the city of Jerusalem that day. And all Jews, Jews today are descendants of that vast, larger majority of people. So they're just not descendants of the group that were involved in that. So right there, it's a non-starter of an argument to try to say, all Jews today have this responsibility. No, they're not connected to the people biologically who were involved back then. They're not involved in that. What most people do, they'll take out of context Matthew 27:25, when the crowd at Jesus' crucifixion says, his blood be upon us and on our children. But the Bible never says that that God honored this oath that the crowd made there. So Pope Benedict XVI, in his work Jesus of Nazareth, he talks about this. He says that this line, the Christian will remember that Jesus' blood speaks a different language from the blood of Abel. It does not cry out for vengeance. So it's saying that his blood be upon us and on our children. The Christian will remember that Jesus' blood speaks different language from the blood of Abel. It does not cry out for vengeance and punishment. It brings reconciliation. It is not poured out against anyone. It is poured out for many, for all. Read in the light of faith, it means that we all stand in need of the purifying power of love, which is in his Christ's blood. These words are not a curse, but rather redemption, salvation. So it is showing that even those people, and Acts of the Apostles is very clear on this, even though there were people, Jews and non-Jews, at the time of Christ's death, who had malice and desired the worst for Christ, God used their individual sinful attitudes to accomplish the best for humanity, the redemption of all people. And so,
Could I say also, certainly the Romans are the actual killers of Jesus, but even if you said and as it's perfectly fair to say, the Jewish authorities and as you said, those Jews who were advocating for Jesus's death, they bear a responsibility, just as you or I would if we were advocating for someone's death. But moral guilt can't be passed down biologically. It's not that kind of a thing.
No, it can't be. And I think also all that can be passed down. So, for example, when we look at original sin, the Catechism talks about original sin not being a sin that is committed, but a deprivation. It is the absence of grace that had previously been given to Adam and Eve that was lost from them, and so it could not be passed on to their descendants. So the Bible is clear. God says that He will not punish a child for the sins of their father. A child may suffer because of the sins of the father. So if a group of people lives an idolatrous life, and God's judgment brings an invading army onto that group, which happened to Israel a lot, the children suffer. They didn't do anything, but their parents brought wrath and misfortune upon them. That's not the same as being directly sentenced for a crime that your father, grandfather, or great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather committed. The other thing that people will do is they'll say, oh, well, the Bible talks about, it says the Jews killed Jesus.
Especially in John's gospel.
Right.
Yeah.
But in John's gospel, we have to remember that the hoi eudoi, that can refer to Jewish people as a whole, but more often it's talking about a particular set of Jews. It's better to translate it in many of these cases, the Judeans.
Yeah. That
it's talking about particular Jews in Judea who were loyal to the temple, temple politics, placating the Roman occupiers towards particular Judeans. That makes more sense of when John often uses the word. So, for example, in John 7:1, it says, after this, Jesus went about in Galilee. He would not go about in Judea because the Jews sought to kill him. But there were lots of Jews in Galilee.
Yeah, Galilee.
There were Gentiles. Yeah, right. But there were lots of Jews who were in Galilee. But it makes sense if you say, oh, after this, he went about in Galilee. He would not go about in Judea because the Judeans sought to kill him.
Yeah.
And so when that's applied, we see that what is being spoken of here is not about just Jews as a whole. It's about a subset of them, because many Jews would either go on to convert, or even those who didn't convert, they were neutral to Jesus's mission, or neutral to the apostles' mission. You had in Acts chapter 5, it says, the rabbi says to the Sanhedrin, well, look, if this is not from God, it will fail. And if it's from God, we don't want to stand in the way.
That's right. And so, yeah, there's not a sense of that Gamaliel is being given to us there as a bad guy. He's simply a wise, neutral observer of the circumstances.
Right. But the Catechism of the Catholic Church in paragraph 597 is like, okay, well, how should we get an answer on whether the Jews are responsible for the death of Jesus? The Church tells us. Listen to what the Church says. In paragraph 597, it says, we cannot lay responsibility for the trial on the Jews in Jerusalem as a whole, despite the outcry of a manipulated crowd. And then so it says that, and then other passages talking about we certainly can't apply that to Jewish people in perpetuity going forward. So it's important to remember.
All right, we'll continue with our conversation about anti-Semitism. We can talk more. Trent, I'll leave it up to you if we want to talk more about the roots of it, or maybe about what might snap people out of this, because I do think it's something you need to be snapped out of. It's not a wise or neutral position. It's an evil. Anti-Semitism is an evil, and it's one that offends God Himself. It's because it offends greatly the dignity of people that He loves. Let's talk about that when we come back. What can be done to heal this, perhaps, or whatever you would. Anyway, I've got one more segment to talk about this with you. So if there's stuff you want to cover, Trent, we'll do it when we come back on Catholic Answers Live.
Hang on. Catholic Answers Live will return in a moment.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Real Estate for Life. Real Estate for Life connects homebuyers and sellers to real estate agents while supporting pro-life organizations. On the web at realestateforlife.org.
One of the biggest mistakes a Christian can make is to try to do good without God's help. St. Therese said, when we trust only ourselves and not God, our soul becomes incapable of virtue. Her remedy? Works of charity. And the greatest work of charity is to share the gospel. At St. Paul Street Evangelization, a Catholic nonprofit, we encourage you to share the gospel with someone who doesn't know Jesus. Catholic Answers is supported in part by St. Paul Street Evangelization, streetevangelization.com.
The wisdom of Mother Angelica.
Isn't it awesome that we today do not recognize His presence in the Eucharist? Is it because we really don't go to him in humbleness of heart and say, Lord, I don't believe, help my unbelief. Lord, I want to see you. I want to recognize you. I cannot live without you. Are we saying that?
EWTN. Live truth. Live Catholic.
Welcome back. Catholic Answers Live. The Bible says salvation is from the Jews, or Jesus himself says salvation is from the Jews. And so I suppose I should mention that you have a new book out that is a play on that phrase, Trent. Salvation is from the Catholic Church, how Christ uses the church to bring us to him. Of course, there are many sources of salvation. God uses, as we say, secondary causes, and our salvation has many causes. But in what sense do you mean that salvation is from the Catholic Church?
Well, the Catholic Church is the universal church that Christ established to gather all believers into the new covenant. And so in the book, I talk about how the Catholic Church provides us the different means through which God wants to save souls. So the church gives us, for example, the right beliefs. Many people will say, oh, salvation isn't from the Catholic Church, it's from Jesus. Well, right, Jesus died on the cross for us, but what do you have to do to be saved? Oh, well, just believe in Jesus. Okay, so I can believe in Jesus, but not the Trinity? Well, no, you have to believe in the Trinity. Oh, okay, well, do I have to believe in, all this other stuff? Then the question becomes, what do I have to believe? That's not an easy one for Protestants to answer, to separate. What are the essential beliefs? What are the dogmas? What are the dogmas of the faith that we are bound to believe? And if we don't, that's the sin of heresy. So the church gives us the right doctrines to believe, the right moral teachings, what behavior is sinful and not sinful. I've seen Christians will defend contraception. They'll defend in vitro fertilization, for example. They'll defend all different kinds of modern sins. So where do we go to have guidance to know what behavior is compatible with the Christian life and what isn't? It gives us right doctrine, right morals, the right sacraments. Jesus made it very clear, unless you eat his flesh and drink his blood, you have no life within you. The right form of worship to present the Son to the Father on the sacrificial altar. The one sacrifice of Christ takes away the sins of the world that we receive in the Eucharist. And I go through that having the church gives us the right pastors with the authority from the apostles to be able to teach and guide believers. And then I answer over a dozen common objections to the Catholic plan of salvation. So
it's brand new.
It's all there.
We don't often get a brand new Trent Horn book. Salvation is from the Catholic Church.
It's been a little while. It's been a little while.
Well, you've been busy, Trent. How Christ uses the church to bring us to him. Check it out at shop.catholic.com or wherever you get your books. I'm thinking about a 25-year-old this year. Born, and pretty much the first big thing that happens in that person's life is the World Trade Center attacks when they're a year old. Then they get a war in Afghanistan and a war in Iraq, especially the war in Iraq doesn't go well. Then they get the collapse of the financial markets when they're about 8 years old. And then they get the Obama years and the Trump years where the country seems to just shatter and divide into armed camps almost. I mean, it's not almost, sometimes actually into armed camps. And then cap it all off when they're in their late teens or early 20s, COVID comes along. And yes. I think these people, these young people, say 25 to 30 years old, maybe 20 to 30 years old, have just grown up in this unbelievable instability, confusion, and frankly, deception. There are a lot of, they saw the government deceive them about things in those years. I mean, about the stability of the housing market, for example. They saw their parents lose jobs over this, what was essentially government deception and lying by big institutions. And so they're looking for, all right, take me back to when things were stable. And I feel like anti-Semitism is riding on that. You know what I mean? It's like a free rider on that, where the demon of anti-Semitism says, oh, yeah, and by the way, if you believe all this nice stuff that the church is saying about that's also creating an instability. Go back to the good old days when we spoke forcefully against the Jews.
Yeah, it's always you see anti-Semitism will flourish when there is political instability. It happens all throughout history because you want to find a scapegoat, right? During the 14th century, during the Black Death, the Pope came out publicly saying, "Don't blame the Jews for the Black Death. They also suffer from this as well." And it is a very rational argument that he made, but there was still hysteria from people trying to blame Jews for this. I see anti-Semites today trying to blame the Black Plague on Jews.
That's holding a grudge, isn't it? Like I'm not going to blame you for that. Yeah.
Yeah, it rots the brain. When you look in the 1930s, for example, you have a gentleman named Father Charles Coughlin. He was one of the most famous figures in radio in the country. I think at one point, a third of the country was listening to him. He was a very theatrical Catholic priest. He was flourishing. Radio was a new technology and everyone wanted to tune in. It's the Great Depression, so everybody's broke. At least you can just turn on a radio and listen to something. And he captivated people. And steadily, though, he began to blame the Jews more and more. It starts with the bankers and then turns into the Jews as to why you have this economic crisis in the Great Depression. When World War II begins, the Jews are behind this, communism. The Jews are both responsible for communism and they're responsible for capitalism and unpredictable economic markets. So they're
classic no-win situation.
Yes, or Jews, people will say that Jews are actually atheistic materialists, and so they want to make everyone atheists, but Jews are also superstitious fanatics who will engage in all kinds of superstitions. So it's like, I will find this all the time in anti-Semitic literature, that Jews are responsible for both sides of an evil. So it's just, you can't win, basically. And so Father Coughlin was tapped into that, and the 30s were a time, when communism was at its heyday as well, that many of these dangerous ideologies will take advantage of instability. And so I feel bad I feel tremendous sorrow for Gen Z. I really, 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 really do. They did not get it. Even as a millennial, I didn't get a fair shake. And I mean, as for us millennials, we went through 9/11, we had to go back to math class, not like Gen Z, but when we were starting out, when we tried to become adults, financial crisis, bam. Then markets, then COVID in the midst of our adulthood, trying to figure out things. But at the very least, though, I still got to have a fun childhood. I at least got to have that.
Yeah, you're right. They didn't.
No. And you know what's worse for them? They try to go out, and this will tie everything together. I remember as a high schooler and at college. So from 99 to 2007, we had fun. It was free of social media, free of pressure. You could go out and your life would not worry about it winding up on the internet unless you're a Star Wars kid. But for everybody else, you didn't end up there. For Gen Z, their life is online. They're worried about trying to go out and hang out with friends and just be goofy and have fun. What if someone films it and it's all over the internet? That's horrible. I weep that they have to live in that. And much the same way, so they'll find solace in just being online, privately, anonymously, so I can't be made fun of. And that's where you end up disconnecting from reality and buying whatever the algorithm feeds you, including conspiracy theories. My best suggestion for people who are falling down this whole rabbit hole of anti-Semitism or any other conspiracy theory or anything like that, just unplug, find a group of people in a productive activity locally to you, spend as much time doing that, and you will feel better.
Yeah.
The less time you spend online, the more you spend with other people in your local community, not looking at your phone, not being on the computer, it'll be a breath of fresh air. And these other conspiratorial beliefs, they'll waste away.
And it doesn't follow that just because they lied to you about COVID and they lied to you about the housing market, that the Holocaust is a lie.
Right.
At a certain point, you can. There are some things that did happen, and the Holocaust happened, and stop denying it. Trent Horn, will you do another hour with me? But this time we'll take questions from your patrons.
Let's do it.
Trent Horn, the author of just a tremendous number of great books. He did it again. Salvation is from the Catholic Church. I am so jealous of that title. I wish I had thought of that. How Christ uses the church to bring us to him. And he does. And he wants to. And you should get this book. Salvation is from the Catholic Church. Trent Horn, our guest. We'll continue with him right after this with questions from his patrons. on Catholic Answers Live. welcome back, and happy Boxing Day to you, and Merry Christmas. And let's have a little more fun this hour. Lighten things up a little bit. It's the season. People maybe are off today. I hope you're off today, or maybe you're on and you joined us while you're working. Thank you very much for that. We appreciate that you join us. But let's have a little fun with Trent Horn for the Christmas season. Is that all right with you, Trent? If we have fun at your expense? No, it won't be at your expense.
It will just be with my expense. You'll say, "We're not laughing at you. We're laughing with you." I'm not laughing. Well, you should be.
Yes, that was actually our plan. You've ruined it now, but that's what we were about to do.
All right, let's do it.
We're gonna take questions from your patrons, but first, Edgar has this thing he likes to do where he plays a clip that he finds on the internet, and I'm probably supposed to know more about it, like YouTube or where on the. Is it YouTube? Did you care if I know? It is YouTube. All right. And then he plays it, and then he gets our reaction to it.
Okay.
And he's been doing this on this thing we call the Super Show, which is a show we do before the show on the internet. But we're going to do it live now with you on Catholic Answers Live.
Do it live.
Are you
we'll
gonna
do it live?
You will just do it live. I can't do it. We'll do it live.
Thing sucks. Do it live.
At least I got that reference.
Thank you.
Okay, so what are you going to do right now? You're going to play a clip for us? And then Trent reacts to it, or I react to it, or what? Trent reacts. Okay, so we're looking for the reaction of Mr. Trent Horn to the following clip. Go ahead.
All agree that Jar Jar being a Sith has been one of the most popular fan theories around. But is it actually true? Well, there is actually proof that he may be one, and here's how. At one point during the Clone Wars, Jar Jar picked up a lightsaber, and crazy enough, he wielded it confidently and used it pretty well. But that's not all. Not only did he prove he could use a saber, but he's also been able to convince people to do things at the most pivotal moments. The biggest example of this was when he convinced the Senate to give Palpatine emergency powers in Episode 2. Without that, Palpatine would have never had full control, which means there would have been no clone army for the Jedi, which also means no Order 66. In a deleted scene, Palpatine even thanked Jar Jar for giving him these powers, which makes it even more suspicious. Not only that, but George Lucas himself even said that Jar Jar was the key to everything. So with that, do you think he's a Sith Lord?
Trent?
No.
You don't think you don't think Jar Jar's a Sith Lord? I don't.
Misa think this theory has holes in it.
There we go. There we go. He did a little Jar Jar for us. I want to make videos like that where you get to talk like this.
He was evil, no doubt. He is He's not a moral evil. He is a natural evil. So
That's
like a horrible fungus or a bug bite or a hurricane. Jar Jar represented a tremendous natural evil that befell the Star Wars franchise. Or like a baby that throws up on you. You can't get mad at the baby. It's not the baby's fault. You can be annoyed by the vomit on your clothes. And that is Jar Jar Binks.
So Jar Jar is not a Sith, just a material evil.
No, people can use you can use lightsabers if you are trained well enough in that. So, for example, Count Dooku trained General Grievous to be able to lightsaber duel other Jedis, but Grievous is not a Sith Lord. He doesn't have any Force powers, so that doesn't prove anything.
You're starting to come across as kind of a nerd now. That was a lot of lore right there.
I have. Although this is strange for me, Sai, because I am technically what is called a Jedi vacantist. I don't recognize any of the events that took place after Return of the Jedi as being events that actually happened, though I may make an exception for Rogue One and the Clone Wars cartoon animated series, I should say.
But not Solo? Not the movie Solo? You didn't like the movie Solo?
Oh, we don't need an explanation for why his name is Han Solo. That can just be his name, along with everything else in it. Now, you know what I would have been okay with, Sai?
What?
A Han Solo movie, that makes me mad. A Lando movie, I could get behind that.
Well, yeah, okay.
There's a lot of Lando
I'm just going to go agree to
disagree
disagree on that one. Agree to disagree. How do you get to talk like that guy who made that video? Is there a school for that kind of talking? Do you think Jar Jar is a... What is that? What was he doing? Is that how you talk on YouTube? You're supposed to talk like... Because I feel I could master that, and I can learn to be a new media star If you had just told me that's how I'm supposed to talk.
I think that's AI or maybe
AI?
Jerry Seinfeld
It's
having
like a
really
Jerry
bad day.
Seinfeld AI. It's not even an IA.
What's the deal with Jar Jar Binks?
Jar Jar Binks. The guy has a very. Is the next guy gonna talk like that? Because it's gonna bother me. You can't stop doing it once you start.
Right.
I'm locked in like this. It's like if you cross your eyes and they get stuck like that.
All right.
Go ahead. Give us another one.
Oh, we got another one? All right.
I'm waiting for Edgar.
Have you heard of the Home Alone dad theory? Well, it suggests that Kevin McAllister's father, Peter, might have a mysterious source of wealth, fueling fan speculation. The theory arises from the McAllisters' lavish lifestyle, including their large suburban Chicago home and their ability to fund expensive family vacations, such as their trip to Paris. Some fans theorize that Peter could be involved in the mob or criminal activities, given his unexplained wealth and calmness about leaving Kevin behind. Others speculate about possible insurance fraud, especially considering the burglary at their home. A less common but intriguing angle is that Peter might be a government agent, given the lack of clarity about his job. Let us know your theory in the comments.
Maybe he's a Sith Lord.
There you go.
He's more likely to be a Sith Lord.
Let's go to the break.
Than
We don't need
Binks.
anything.
I will. No, I gotta. Or this. Did you know in the early 1990s there were wealthy people? Pretty crazy, who had kind of boring jobs.
What?
Crazy. This is the one that people always bring up also, Cy, when they say like, and I do believe housing has become unaffordable.
Oh,
Like,
yeah,
yes,
it
housing
has.
market
That's a
has
problem.
gone insane. And people will say like, look what Kevin McAllister, the house he could buy with a middle-class lifestyle. And it's this lavish, New England home. And it's like, we've been robbed of this. Like, no. This is not a middle-class family. You want to know how I know why? Because they're a family in the 1990s who went to Paris for a vacation.
Yeah.
Families in the 1990s, like you didn't travel, the only people who travel international in the 90s were people who could afford to pay for travel agents to get tickets to go and do something like that.
Remember travel
so
agents?
It's very different. What?
I said, remember travel agents? Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah, he's just a rich dude. That's all. Not all rich dudes, it's nefarious. He's probably the CFO of a mid-size medical company, and he's got plenty of money. That's what I think.
The simplest explanation is
that
usually
guy
the correct
talks
one.
interesting too. Magnificent suburban Chicago home.
No, that guy
That
was
guy is
a
good.
reject. That guy was a reject from the Dateline auditions. Like, do you want to narrate the Dateline murder mystery show?
Oh yeah.
What he thought was a normal Friday afternoon would become a web of lies and intrigue. Just like that. His voice reminded me of like a failed Dateline murder mystery voiceover person.
Dateline is one of those shows that if you're watching it and the commercial comes on and you get about 2 commercials in and somebody says, "What are you watching?" You can't remember. You're like, I know I'm watching something, but I don't remember what show I'm watching. And then it comes back on. You go, oh yeah, I'm in the middle of a murder mystery. Some shows it's amazing how little they penetrate into the mind that you can't even remember what the show is while the commercial is playing.
I wonder if people do that for Catholic Answers Live. We come back, like, what were they talking about? It's something about the Jews. I can't remember.
Are the Jews Sith Lords was the main topic of the first. That would have been a better question for me to open with.
Do the Jews have a conspiracy to rob houses around Christmas and plug up the drains and fill the house with water when they go? Is
that what happened in? I can't remember that.
In
movie,
Home Alone.
Home Alone. Is that what happened?
The sticky bandits. They're the wet bandits, and they become the sticky bandits. Were Marv and were they Jewish? Probably.
I'm not a huge fan of slapstick. I'm not a huge fan of it. Like I like it when when Buster Keaton does it or when Charlie Chaplin does it. But after that, I think they did it. Like, why are we still doing this? I don't need to see anybody slip on marbles and fall down the stairs. It just doesn't do it.
Slapstick, it gets old, but physical comedy. For example, we have still not reached the heights of physical comedy that Jim Carrey could do in the 1990s.
Well,
he was a living cartoon.
Yeah, he was, and that's why after I saw a Jim Carrey movie, I thought, I'm so glad I saw that. Never have to do that again, though. All right, we'll take a quick break. Right back with Trent Horn No more conspiracy. I'm having trouble with myself. No more conspiracy theories. We're going straight to patron questions when we come back.
Catholic Answers Live.
Do you have a question but prefer to ask it privately? Catholic Questions can help. Go to CatholicQuestions.com to ask your question online, email us, drop us a letter, or give us a call. Longtime Catholic Answers Live apologist and author Jim Blackburn or another Catholic Questions apologist will be happy to assist you. Catholic Questions proudly supports Catholic Answers Live, so visit us at CatholicQuestions.com today. That's CatholicQuestions.com.
The power of prayer simply means that words have an effect. For example, when a couple says, I do, it literally changes two people to becoming one in marriage. When you say, I love you, it changes us and it gives us value. The power of prayer is in the words and in the sentiment, but it's also in the fact that God, who is omnipotent, all-powerful, answers our prayers.
I want to do that voice so bad, but I'm not that good at it. I got to work on my internet YouTube voice. You ready for some patron questions, Trent Horn? Trent Horn's here. It's Christmas. I just actually literally ate a Christmas cookie. I don't know how else you would eat a Christmas cookie. I don't know why I threw the word literally in there. But I guess just to show how Christmassy my tummy is right now. I've got a Christmassy tummy. So
you mean sugary and sleepy?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and slightly pepperminty. You want to do some patron questions now from your patrons?
Let's do some patron questions. I would be happy to do that.
Patrons are people who make it possible for Trent to keep doing what he's doing, and they give to support his work at Council of Trent. You should look up counciloftrent.com. It's COUNSELC. Clever. Council of Trent. This one comes from. Am I supposed to say the full name? Do you want?
You can. Some of them I think are usernames, so do your best.
Sean Patrick Duffy. That sounds like an actual real person's name. Trent, what are your thoughts on embryo adoption?
This is bad because I really should have more thoughts on this question.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very torn. I am actually the editor of an anthology on human embryo adoption that was just published by the National Catholic Bioethics Center. I'm one of the co-editors of the anthology. So we wrote the opening summary to the book and then organized the book that has probably something like 24 Catholic authors in it. Jimmy Akin is actually featured in it. He offers an essay on the church's magisterial teaching on human embryo adoption, just to make it clear that the church does not have a specific teaching at this time on whether it's okay to adopt frozen human embryos who have been discarded to prevent them from just wasting away in cryopreservation. So when we're talking about human embryo adoption, that's what we're talking about in a specific, not in vitro fertilization, but human embryos left in cryopreservation and couples who adopt them solely for the good of those embryos themselves. And our authors, we have some, like Father Tad Paholchek, say that it is not permissible. It violates the unique duty and role of the husband to impregnate his wife and no one else. Other Catholic philosophers and ethicists and theologians saying it can be permitted for the good of the child. It's a kind of adoption, theology of adoption. Everyone involved is really split down the middle. I've read both sides. I'm still really undecided. So I take more of a practical approach. I think that even if it is permissible, if you start promoting this as a good thing, it will just serve to make people think it's okay to do IVF because the extra embryos will get adopted anyways. So from a strictly pragmatic perspective, I don't support promoting this and would like to see fewer children end up being created through in vitro fertilization. I certainly mourn those who suffer from infertility, but the inhuman things that occur when children are created outside of the safety of the womb, where they are deliberately killed in IVF labs, left in cryopreservation and storage, where they could have significant health outcomes that we're not even familiar with now as a result of being through the process of IVF. These are just other things that really need to be considered, and that children ultimately, as the church says, no one has a right to a child. A child is a gift. It is a gift from God that we lovingly accept, and it is not right for us to create children outside of the marital act.
Thanks very much, Sean. I hope that answer addressed, it certainly seems like it did, but I hope it did address what you were looking for. Let's go to another patron question. Joseph Daly is a patron of the Trent Horn podcast, Council of Trent. What do you think is the best argument, Joseph asks, against utilitarianism? And what are some good resources to refute this normative theory? What book or resource do you think provides the best defense of natural law ethics?
Charles Rice, a while back, did a book, 50 Questions on Natural Law. And by the way, I would say that natural law, there's different schools of thought of natural law. Robert George is a proponent of the new natural law theory. You can get his books on that. Someone like Ed Feser might be more of what you would call kind of an older traditional natural law school theorist. And both have their place within Catholic moral philosophy and theology. But you could also, even if you don't believe in natural law theory, or your philosopher is not in favor of that, it doesn't follow that you should be a utilitarian. There's many other ethical theories that are out there. I think that the biggest objection to utilitarianism is that it has a misplacing of ultimate value. Utilitarian, and there's different, by the way, there's different kinds of utilitarianism as well. What the questioner is probably thinking of is act utilitarianism. This is the idea that an act is moral. An action is moral if it produces more utility than another act. And usually utility is defined in terms of well-being. Like, does it produce more well-being? Does it cause less harm? A sloppy way of doing it is to say that utilitarians believe in the maximum amount of pleasure for the greatest number of people, which those are two competing things, by the way. If you try to put it that way, it leads to all kinds of crazy. You can't do that, right? Because let's say you could increase so there's lots of people, and lower happiness until it gets to a bare minimum amount. So everyone's just barely willing to live, but there's zillions of people. Or if you say, well, I want to have a society where it's the average amount of happiness is the highest. Well, then we should kill this guy if he's sad, and that will increase the average. There's all kinds of problems here. So it misplaces the ultimate value in being in well-being and pleasure versus just persons themselves as being intrinsic sources of value. And the best way to show the problems of utilitarianism is just to show, when brought to its logical conclusions, utilitarianism leads to repugnant, immoral conclusions. It just does not account for our basic moral intuitions that we have, that we can be very certain of, that are true. Oh, yes, I used to always do these thought experiments of you getting killed with abortion. I guess we can
skip.
I have to. I'm going to have to.
Here we go.
I'm going to. And it's going to be worse, Si.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's this time. So, for example, here's something utilitarianism cannot.
All right.
So let's say Si, he's no longer, people are a fan of him as a host of Catholic Answers Live. And
so we're talking about 5 years ago.
Right. He gets fired, and he wanders the streets and is homeless and has no friends or family anymore, stumbles into a hospital. And then the doctors realize he's unconscious. Oh, we could save his life. Or wait, 5 of his organs would save 5 healthy, beloved individuals of the Catholic Answers Apologetics team. Well, utilitarianism would say that what would produce the most utility is to carve up Si, so that the other 5 members of the Catholic Answers Apologetics team and family can go on to have happy, productive lives. There's more utility there. So you could sacrifice people. Here's another one. This is another fun one. So another one where this one involves Si and his twin brother, Guy.
Why do you say this is another fun one? That first one wasn't fun. I didn't have fun with that thing.
Well, let's see. So Si and Guy are twin joggers, and Bob is a neighbor to them.
Yeah.
And Bob really cannot stand Si and Guy jogging past his house every day.
All right.
One day, Bob backs out of his house, and he accidentally runs over Guy, and he's like, oh, I can't believe that happened. Then the next day he thinks, I really can't stand that other jogger, Si, and here he comes running by. He's gonna come running by any soon. I really hope when I back out my car right now, I accidentally run over him as well. Okay, now if utilitarianism is true, both of these acts are either equally right or equally wrong, okay? Because they cause the same utility, the death of a person.
Right.
But notice the intentions are very different here. In one case, you would say, well, he's a bad guy, but what he did wasn't wrong because, it was an accident. But if you say it's wrong because he caused, if it's wrong to back over Psy because he hoped for that to happen and it causes negative utility, then it's wrong to accidentally do it. So you can't take things that don't cause negative utility, like just evil thoughts a person may have, and say that those are evil. And then there's lots of other examples. Utilitarianism has a hard time explaining why we have special obligations to our own family members instead of to other people if utility is all that matters. When it comes to books on this, I would say Kara Watiwa, the future Pope John Paul II, his book Love and Responsibility has a good section on utilitarianism, and Alistair McIntyre's book After Virtue also has good critiques of utilitarianism. But even the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy will show you many formidable objections to utilitarianism, to act utilitarianism. That's why a lot of these guys will say, well, we're rule utilitarians, so we just follow rules that end up producing the most utility, which either makes you more of a traditional deontologist, rule-based person, or you end up having to break the rules in an emergency situation anyways, and it becomes just kind of incoherent. But that's a little bit on utilitarianism there.
Joseph, thank you. That was actually kind of nostalgic. A little trip down memory lane, Trent finding various ways to kill me on the air.
Careful when you jog down memory lane, Cy.
I know, you never know, Bob. Just keep an eye out for Bob. I got time for another one before we have to take a break. These are questions from Trent's patrons. Mario Rosas. Hi, Trent.
Hello.
Oh, there you go. Mario said, hi, Trent.
Hello, Mario.
All right.
Yeah.
How do I approach a friend who believes many of our dogmas, but feels like he's growing spiritually in his charismatic church, so he feels no need to change?
I would just ask him, what advice would you give to a Christian, to someone who you would want to join your charismatic church, but feels like they are growing spiritually in a non-Christian religion? So let's say you're friends with a Mormon, and you say, oh, why don't you come to my church and be baptized and worship Jesus? And the Mormon says, I'm interested, but I'm just growing so much in I'm growing so much here in the Mormon church. What would you say to him? I'm sure the charismatic guy will point out, oh, well, here's problems in moral theology. That even if you're growing in certain fruits of the spirit and certain virtue, where you're growing in certain virtues, for example, you're still missing very important things that God wants you to have. So at least for that guy, I tell him, hey, you would tell a non-Christian, even if they're growing in virtue, there's important things they're missing out on in the church, the Christian church, what you think is the true church. You would ask Mario, you could ask your friend, do you believe Christians should belong to the church, whatever that is? What if I were to tell you, it's like the Matrix, red pill, blue pill. What if I were to tell you that the church is not just an invisible confederation or loose-knit invisible collection of all Christians, but that it has a visible, enduring hierarchy that can guide us as believers to salvation through the administering of the sacraments, and that other Christians might be connected to this church, say Protestants, for example, in imperfect ways, but we desire for all Christians to be in perfect communion with the one holy Catholic Apostolic Church that Jesus Christ established.
Mario, I hope that was helpful to you. You know what? When we get these questions in like this, you go through them pretty quick. I mean, you even murdered me a couple times, and I still have time for another question.
No, one of those was manslaughter at best. I think both of those. I think one time it was murder, but I think with the car, if I went to court, the first time you get off, I think both of those. I think
you
barely
harvested my organs. That's while I was alive. That's murder.
That was murder. You weren't alive. We had the dignity to kill you first. My goodness, Cy, come on. But for Cy and Guy, the twin jogger car rolling, at best you're going to get me on reckless indifferent to life. You're not getting me for murder.
I'm still dead either way.
You give me manslaughter 3. I'll take manslaughter 3.
Merry Christmas. Trent's killing me again.
5 years. 5 years with time served.
Nothing gets me in the Christmas spirit like Trent murdering me and then arguing for lenience from the court.
Murder is a prejudicial term here, Cy. At best, you've only shown manslaughter. You've only shown homicide. Okay. Let's not poison the jury.
Trent has a new book.
Which we could also do for a thought experiment.
Trent's new book is called Salvation is from the Catholic Church, How Christ Uses the Church to Bring Us to Him. I should have mentioned it while he was giving that last answer.
For example, Sai, if I did something horrible, even like kill you,
yep,
I could go to confession and I could find salvation because God desires the salvation of all people.
You know what? If you killed me, I would want you to do that. I would want you to find salvation.
That is good.
Yeah.
That is good. That shows that you are in a state of grace because you have the love of God in your heart and you don't seek vengeance. You seek the good of others.
Oh, I was just saying it to sound good on radio. All right, we got to take a quick break.
And you better go to confession.
Trent Horn is our guest. Merry Christmas. We got lots more questions from his patrons coming up right after this on Catholic Answers Live.
When the resurrected Jesus appeared to disciples on the road to Emmaus, they didn't recognize him until the breaking of the bread. The same is true today. In the Holy Eucharist, we really meet Jesus. In The Eucharist is Really Jesus, author Joe Heschmeyer explains how knowing Jesus in the Eucharist is the key to understanding all of Christian faith. Order your copy of The Eucharist is Really Jesus today at shop.catholic.com or get it at a good Catholic bookstore.
Do you have what it takes to defend your Catholic faith? The work of apologetics takes study, practice, and skill, but more than anything, it takes spiritual strength. The Soul of Apologetics, a new prayer resource from Catholic Answers, gives you the spiritual tools every Catholic apologist needs: prayers, meditations, and scripture-based reflections to build up the interior life. Order your copy of The Soul of Apologetics today at shop.catholic.com or ask for it at a good Catholic bookstore.
We hope that one of the things that we communicate here at Catholic Answers Live is that our Catholic faith allows us to be fully serious about all the problems we encounter in the church and in the world, but it also lets us have light hearts and maybe even mix in a bit of fun, and that is exactly what our good friend Joe Heschmeyer does in his popular podcast, Shameless Popery. You should check it out at shamelessjoe.com. Joe's got a deep grasp of the faith, morals, the teachings of the church, all that, but he's also got a witty conversational style. He entertains and he informs, but you will leave equipped to better answer the most common challenges, misconceptions, and questions about the Catholic faith. He's got insightful guests, he does on-air debates, and he takes a close look into all the things that you want to know about as a Catholic living today. You'll walk away knowledgeable and filled with joy. Look for Joe on his YouTube channel. Check him out at shamelessjoe.com or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you like what you hear, become a patron.
Trent Horn's our guest. Merry Christmas to you. Thanks for being here with us. We're taking questions. Well, we've got the questions. I've got them in front of me from his patrons, people who support his Council of Trent podcast, certainly one of the most popular Catholic podcasts anywhere on the planet Earth, but I would also say one of the most popular and referred to and talked about podcasts anywhere being done by anyone. And well worth it. You should check it out. Go to counciloftrent.com. That's the easiest place to find it. Well, maybe you're good at finding stuff. You can find it wherever you get your podcasts, or you can go to YouTube and watch it on Trent's YouTube channel. As I said, all the questions are from patrons of that podcast, and this one comes from Emmanuel Cruz. Emmanuel wants to know, do you have any recommendations on trying to evangelize family members who are atheists?
Sure. And I would say it is important to remember that apologetics and evangelism are not synonyms. They are not the same thing. Apologetics and evangelism, really, they're distinct tools. Apologetics is often a subset of evangelism, but they're very distinct. You can evangelize someone without engaging in apologetics. Like if someone used to be Catholic but has left the faith, fallen on hard times, just telling them, hey, look, God loves you. He hasn't forgotten about you. He has a plan for your life, and you won't regret going back to God, asking for forgiveness, going to the sacrament of confession, receiving him in the Eucharist, and going to church. God loves you. Go there and just talk to him, and you won't be disappointed. Just to appeal to someone like that, that's engaging in evangelism. I mean, well, it's bringing someone who's fallen away. Evangelism technically would be sharing the good news of the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ, especially to people who are unbaptized. But in the looser sense of the word, you're evangelizing. And you don't have to maybe do a defense. The person might just need a spiritual kick in the pants. But apologetics, you could do that even someone who fully believes the faith. You say, hey, you're troubled by this. Let me give you some reasons to help you with that. So when it comes to evangelizing atheist family members, a lot of it isn't so much having the best arguments, which are important to have, but having just like the right kind of mannerism. St. Paul in the letter to the Corinthians says, if I have all knowledge, but I don't have love, I'm a resounding gong. So I think what you can do is just be inviting them to Catholic functions, where, maybe not a mass if they want to go. Say, hey, do you want to come to mass with me? Well, I'm an atheist. Why would I go? Oh, especially like Christmas mass, for example, or to Easter, just to come with and, to see what it's like, or to an event at your parish that's a bit more maybe low stakes and not as liturgical, what we would call pre-evangelization. When it comes to having conversations, not trying to beat somebody in a debate, but just like asking them questions, saying like, okay, so if you're an atheist, do you think there is no God, or you just think you don't have a good reason to believe in God? So it's more of an I don't know, like asking questions and then saying, what do you think about, these are things like sharing your testimony to say, hey, these are the things that I find really interesting that point to God for me. What would you think of that? So once again, you're not debating the person. You're asking them what they think. You're sharing your testimony. And in sharing your testimony, maybe you're sharing an argument you find compelling. Maybe you could share a debate with them and say, hey, you want to watch this debate and see what you think of it? Like the debate I had with Alex O'Connor on atheism back on Pints with Aquinas many years ago. That was a really good debate. Say, what do you think about this? That's another route. But ultimately, you want to keep the door open, pray for the person, be inviting, and just be open to God wherever the role you're going to have with that person. Maybe you aren't the one that's going to make the light bulb go off for them, but you plant a seed that somebody else will water and will flourish. But pray for them, offer, just as I said, just try to keep the door open when you're engaged in these conversations, and you don't want to rush things. Just treat them with the dignity they have as a person.
Emmanuel, thank you very much for your support of Trent and for your question. This one comes from another patron of Trent Horn's podcast, Rachel Perez, and Rachel asks this. Hi, Trent.
Hello, Rachel.
I feel like I have to do that part. I need to get the response from you. What does Pope Leo's statement on not using the title of Mary as co-redemptrix mean for the direction of the church? Why was that statement important? As a new convert, I am unsure of the importance of the Mater Populi Fidelis letter, and I wondered if you could help me understand.
Sure. So the letter itself, it comes from the Dicastery for the Doctrine of the Faith, the DDF, previously the CDF, previously the Holy Office. I love AKA. So it comes from there, and Cardinal Fernandez, the head of the DDF, has clarified the meaning of this document, and it's doctrinal notes on what kind of language the church uses in reference to Mary. And he was very clear that the church has not put out some kind of a ban on lay Catholics describing Mary with terms like co-redemptrix, which is a term that has been used previously. Popes have used it, theologians have used it to describe Mary's unique role in God's plan of redeeming the world, that her cooperation with God, cooperating with God in the Annunciation by saying yes and freely allowing herself to bear the Son and giving up her maternal rights so that her Son would die on the cross to redeem the world. She cooperated with God's plan to redeem humanity. But that does not mean that she redeemed humanity in the same way that Christ did, so that they are both equally redeemers, or Mary is not another redeemer, as one Reformed Baptist apologist likes to claim in a book he wrote about Mary many, many years ago that I've responded to in my own works. So it's not like if you call Mary co-redemptrix at home when you're praying, it's not like the Pope Mobile is going to show up at your house with blue and red lights flashing and they're going to burst down your door and the Inquisition is going to show up and discipline you. Though I imagine if they did show up, though, I hope the siren, though, it would not be the normal siren. It would be the European police siren. the European ones. I'm always like, is Jason Bourne on the run? What is going on here? I hear the European police sirens, because it has to be for the Pope Mobile. No, but the document does say, though, that for the purposes of ecumenism, for the purposes of not creating unnecessary doctrinal barriers, the term is not going to be used in official church documents, documents promulgating the teaching of the church. And that's important because the term itself, it can be so often misunderstood. If a term can be misunderstood so easily, and it's not strictly necessary to preserve an important dogma. So, for example, the term Theotokos, or to calling Mary the mother of God, is a dogmatic term, a term that is used. Many Protestants misunderstand it. But the clarification of that term, I would say, is well worth it, because it secures a very central and key truth of the faith, that not all doctrines are equally weighted. There is what is called a hierarchy of truth. So, for example, Christ rising from the dead is more essential faith, a more essential article of faith than Christ ascending into heaven. While Christ ascending into heaven is important, Christ rising from the dead, if Christ is not risen, your faith is in vain, as Paul would say. So there's going to be some truths that are more central, and as we go out more, there are going to be ones that are less central. So the truth that Jesus is God is a really central truth to the Christian faith. If you deny that, you're not Christian. So saying Mary is the mother of God is an integral element of upholding that Christ was divine throughout his entire life. He didn't just come to become divine later at his baptism, as some heretics said in the early church. But the term co-redemptrix causes even more confusion than the term mother of God, and there isn't as central of a doctrine that is necessary to secure in using that term, namely the doctrine that Mary participated in a special way with Christ in Christ's redemption of the world. So it's not worth it to cause all of this undue hardship and misunderstandings and barriers to outreach to non-Catholics in that circumstance. So I hope that's helpful. And also, my colleague Joe Heschmeyer, I think, has a whole episode about this on his channel, Shameless Popery, that I would commend you to watch if you would like some more on that.
Thanks. Check that out, Rachel. Thanks very much. We'll take a quick break, right back with more questions from patrons for Trent Horn on this Boxing Day on Catholic Answers Live.
Hang on. Catholic Answers Live will return in a moment.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Real Estate for Life. Real Estate for Life connects homebuyers and sellers to real estate agents while supporting pro-life organizations. On the web at realestateforlife.org.
One of the biggest mistakes a Christian can make is to try to do good without God's help. St. Therese said, "When we trust only ourselves and not God, our soul becomes incapable of virtue." Her remedy? Works of charity. And the greatest work of charity is to share the gospel. At St. Paul Street Evangelization, a Catholic nonprofit, we encourage you to share the gospel with someone who doesn't know Jesus. Catholic Answers is supported in part by St. Paul Street Evangelization, streetevangelization.com.
The wisdom of Mother Angelica.
Isn't it awesome that we today do not recognize his presence in the Eucharist? Is it because we really don't go to him in humbleness of heart and say, Lord, I don't believe, help my unbelief. Lord, I want to see you. I want to recognize you. I cannot live without you. Are we saying that?
EWTN. Live truth. Live Catholic.
Trent Horn's our guest. It's kind of a relaxed feel. I hope you're relaxed wherever you are. Thanks for joining us on this day after Christmas. And we got all the questions are in. They're from patrons of Trent's show, Shameless Trentery. No, what's it called? It's called Council of Trent. Council of Trent. You can find it at counciloftrent.com. You can find out all about it. This question comes from one of your patrons named Skabanik. How do you think I'm doing with that? Skabanik?
SK Bannock.
Okay. Oh, all right. That might even better. Oh, this is a hard question. Settle in. How's Laura?
Oh, thank you for asking. Laura and I always joke that there is a particular sort of cadence that young, attractive girls of a certain socio-demographic will say when they say thank you. It doesn't always come off as being really genuine. It's almost a little Valley Girlish. So a lot of times we'll do stuff and we'll say, "Oh, thank you." So imagine this particular 19-year-old college girl, certain demographic and social status, her Starbucks in hand, trying to be polite but not really, and say, so the response is, "Oh, thank you," and then trying to like leave the situation. So that is my my reply to that. No, genuine thank you for asking. It's getting there. That is my reply. It is getting there.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, it was my wife was diagnosed with a tumor, brain cancer, back in May. Then she underwent surgery to remove the tumor in July. And it's been a hard road, but she's really come a long way. The tumor was around her speech center. It's like, I don't know, like an inch by inch and a half, or an inch by half an inch. It was not tiny, not huge. Thankfully, we caught it early. So it was removed. We did the pathology report on it, and it seemed to be basically like a grade 2, like something that almost a grade 1, something where you wouldn't have to really worry about it. There's always still risk it could come back, but we got the most favorable diagnosis from it. But that said, though, when you take away parts of somebody's brain, weird things will happen. Like when she was first in the hospital after the surgery, I feel like she had maybe 100 or 200 words at best, maybe 100. I don't know. There was a lot she could not say. She could not say my name. She could only say my husband. She couldn't say our children's names. It was very hard for her to communicate. Oh yeah, it was rough. So we had to use, she couldn't write either. So we had to use a lot of sign, and we were basically playing charades for 2 weeks. And now I would say her speech is mostly back, but she has to speak much slower. Not much, but what's nice is she usually talked at 1.5 speed for YouTube. Now she's around back. Now she's really talking more at 1. She's at 1. So that works out well.
Okay, good.
Actually for her. So she has to, it's just a lot more difficult. She has to really put a lot more effort into speaking now. She gets lightheaded. So prayers for her, you don't feel well. You don't feel well when stuff's wrong with your brain. So that's just been a long-term thing. We're praying it's not going to be something chronic for her. And you know what? It's just hard. Once the kids are back, you're on duty again. They went to her parents' house for a few weeks. We've got 10, 8, and 5-year-old boys. So the house can be a little chaotic sometimes, but prayers are appreciated. And I think everyone's prayers have been really, really helpful for us and for me, because, I've got to still go to work and carry the load and be there when she's not feeling well. And it's a journey. I feel like I'm rambling so much here, Cy. There's a great skit. I think Brent Pella does this skit about MMA post-fight interviews. Like the guy who does the MMA fight, and he comes out, he's been hit in the head so many times he can't give a coherent answer. So he's always like, "So how do you think the fight went?" "Well, I went out there and I went to fight, and I'm a winner. And I went and I did it, and I'm here for it, and I'm a winner, Jay." It's like the blood starts rolling down. So
I think you're doing a little better than that.
A little bit.
And you are a winner.
I'm a winner. Yeah, just came out here for all that, and I'm a winner. So.
I mean, of the two,
I am a winner. I get to be married to Laura. She's
that's
so
right.
funny.
That's right.
So.
And she's the beloved member of that pairing. Even the many people who don't like you, I think they do like Laura.
I have seen numerous comments like these online. I have seen comments, people saying, "I can't stand Trent Horn. His wife Laura is funny though." So I'm like, well,
I didn't even know you checked my comments. I didn't even. That makes me feel better that you actually read those things. I mean, I take the time to write them, and you don't. Right. That's nice to know that you read them.
Your Fleetwood Mac lover, 1985.
Yeah, right. All right. Here's a question from Loretta. I had to fight it off, Trent. I don't know if you could feel it. I had to fight it off. How many times do you think people have said "Get back, Loretta" to her? How many times do you think that has happened in her life? And I just didn't do it. I fought it. It wanted to come out so bad.
It is a hazard. And when you name, it is really hard that now when you name children and do things, you have to just, it's not just like movie quotes and things like that. It's like memes. You have to be so careful what you name your children.
Like, can you name a girl Karen anymore? I mean, people have been really mean about that. And there's a lot of lovely Karens in the world. Like, people named Karen in the world. But Karen...
I think we're going to see, there's going to be this tremendous drop-off. It's sort of like how there was this Cambrian explosion in 1985 of the name Madison for girls.
Oh, yeah.
Because the movie Splash came out. There's going to be like an apocalyptic decline of the name Karen after like some viral videos went out in like 2018, and we just see
just that complete drop off,
declining demographic.
Okay, so this one comes from Loretta, who does not need to get back home, and she says, "Hi Trent."
Hello, Loretta.
What do you think a pastor of a parish can do to keep his college-bound parishioners from straying from the Catholic faith?
I think what he should do is really the opportunities he has to serve the same way you would serve the community as a whole, being present. I think especially when preaching homilies, avoiding the temptation to just preach banality, to preach just like the generic, let's all be nice people homily. I mean, how many homilies have you heard that's always sort of boils down to, well, we're Catholics, so let's be nice, and let's try harder, everyone. That just shouldn't sound like just the same generic encouragement coach gave after practice, because I think young people especially, they want to be challenged, they want to hear even hard truths, but to hear that pastor really is concerned about that. That's why also I read an article recently, Cy. I want to get your take on this. I think it was a deacon or someone, trying to remember who wrote it. It was a suggestion for Pope Leo to amend canon law. I think it's canon law on this point, not the germ. Canon law says that priests are, maybe it's the germ, I can't remember, the general instructions of the Roman Missal, but that priests are strongly urged to give a homily at a daily mass if there's a sufficient number of people. And the recommendation was that it should be changed to permitted. So that way a priest would not feel a sense of guilt like they got to do a homily every single day at a daily mass, when in a lot of cases it's not really needed. And it would free up the priest's workload to maybe focus on, I mean, Protestant pastors, they spend all week on a blockbuster Sunday sermon,
Yeah.
But Catholic priests, they've got so many more things to juggle when they're preaching, when they're teaching the faith, when they're serving the community, along with everything a priest does: house calls, sacramental visits, last rites, managing a school usually. So I think that would be one thing. Before we continue with Loretta's question, though, I don't know what you think about that.
Well, I have to say, Trent, I do think, like, when people think synodality is a bad word, and people are very like, what does synodality even mean, and all that kind of stuff. But one of the things it could mean, if we chose it, like you have to choose what you're going to make a word mean when it's a new thing like that, is that parishes could be profound. They always talk about the priest should listen more and all that, and all that stuff seems so amorphous and everything. But I think, I don't know about the homily at Mass, but priests are doing so many things that you actually don't need a priest to do, that should just be taken over by the laity. A lot of the administrative stuff, a lot of the financial stuff, the priest should be there to govern all of that, but he shouldn't be doing it. And I think that would be
100%.
That would be
100%.
a kind of positive synodality, in my view.
I wish that parishes had a chief operating officer. We have that at Catholic Answers.
Some do, but I think priests need to be more empowered, or maybe even not empowered, but maybe bishops need to be more insistent with them. I don't want you doing this. You have sacramental responsibilities. You have all these other things. I don't want you doing X, X, and X.
Like, I would love if the priest were the one who taught RCIA, for example.
Yes, exactly, Trent. Right.
He does that. Or he's freed up to meet with the youth group. So to go back to Loretta's question about college-bound parishioners, like there, I want a priest freed up so he can better serve them, so he could go spend time for a college youth group. And I think that's hard for college, especially to have. Now, it's interesting, when I was in college, our youth group was really the other college students who were the leaders of the high school youth group that would mentor the high school students. So we had kind of a built-in thing. But to have something like that for young people, and to keep the age range a little bit narrower, not 18 to 39, that's kind of broad, but to have college and post-college, to have a group dedicated to that. This also comes up too for college-bound parishioners, like let's say young men. Like, how do you get young college-age men to go to a men's group? You know how you get college-age men to not go to a parish men's group? You have the parish men's group meet at Saturday at 6:30 in the morning.
Wait, college guys love to get up at 5:30 on Saturday morning.
But that's the problem.
Right.
Yeah, we need, right. But we need like a group to say, yeah, a men's group. And I would love for college-age Catholic men, be a part of our men's group. Come and learn about, masculinity and to grow in your faith. But if it's but I know why we do it. We do it at 6:30 in the morning on Saturday because that's the least disruptive time for dad to be out of the house when kids are at home. Mm-hmm. Because weeknights, you take dad away at like 7 o'clock on a Thursday. It's that's a bridge too far for many people, and understandably so. Sure. But I know I've been to parishes where they have a great young adult men's group, and that's when they meet Thursdays at 7 p.m. because that's when the guys are free. They're not at class anymore. They're off the clock at work or whatever they're doing. That's when they can meet. So to have that and to reaffirm them. So I think that especially having, like we talk about youth ministry for high school students, I'd be more apt to have high school students do family ministry with their parents involved. I talked about this with Eric Salmons, but have dedicated youth ministry, but it's for people in college. And so that's where we have Focus, we have Newman Centers. So I think a pastor working with Focus, Fellowship of Catholic University students, working with the Newman Center, Newman Society, even if they're not like near a college campus, having something like that I think can also be very helpful. But you got to see where they're coming from and meet their particular needs where they are at in their 20s.
I'm going to say thank you to Loretta for the question, because I want to get another one in here, and I'm going to go to Eric Alvarez, your supporter, because I think you have time to answer this one, Trent. Hi, Trent.
Hello, Eric.
What basic book of theology do you recommend? Thanks.
Sure. A really good. Now, at the start, I would say the Catechism of the Catholic Church, or the compendium of the Catechism of the Catholic Church, is always a great thing to read to understand Catholic teaching laid out systematically. If you'd like a very good book on theology more than apologetics, though it has apologetics in it, I would recommend The Light of Christ, An Introduction to Catholicism by Thomas Joseph White. So I think that is a book that has been praised by a lot of people for presenting an approachable, systematic overview of Catholic theology. Because many people, like how I said before, Sai, that evangelism and apologetics are not the same thing. Theology and apologetics are not the same thing. Apologetics is a subset of theology. It's the rational defense of the Christian faith. Theology are just truths about God, truths about divine revelation. So you can do a lot of theology, and many people misunderstand this side. They'll become Catholic or they'll return to the faith, and all they do to grow in their faith is they just study apologetics, which is a good thing to have, but you're missing out on a lot of things to grow in your faith, to learn and grow and to be deeper and more mature, is really learning more about theology, learning about these deeper truths about God, about Christ, about the saints, about Mary and her intercession, about the sacraments, about grace. Theology. Very, very important and fun, because I do apologetics all the time. Very stressful. Theology, really fun to delight in. So I would recommend that.
Eric, thank you very much for the question. Thanks for everybody who supports Trent and what he does over at the Council of Trent. Check it out, counciloftrent.com, on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And check out Trent's brand new book. I mean, brand new book. Salvation is from the Catholic Church. How Christ uses the church to bring us to him. Trent Horn, Merry Christmas to you, Laura, and all the kids. Thanks very much. Did we lose Trent?
I'm right here, sir.
Oh, well,
still here.
Merry Christmas. We lost you for a second.
Merry Christmas.
All right. I thought you were a
Merry
Scrooge
Christmas
there
to
for a
you as
minute.
well.
All right. See you tomorrow on Catholic Answers Live.